around to the back, so we're going to talk about a few people out here before we go in. That over there, the big boulder with the plaque on it, is the tomb of Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams was another of those early patriots. He argued against the Sugar Act, which I bet if you think really hard, you can figure out what it was that taxed. The Stamp Act, the Townsend Act, the Tea Act. He coined the phrase the Boston Massacre, led the protests that would eventually turn into the Boston Tea Party, represented us in Congress, signed the Declaration of Independence. Take a step forward, folks, so that people can make it by behind you there. And eventually became governor of Massachusetts. Sam Adams' arguments against the Stamp Act led to a Stamp Act Congress, which published resolutions in 1765 against the Stamp Act in all the newspapers in America, Europe, and in England, and sent those resolutions to the King and Parliament. There were protests throughout the colonies, which in Boston turned into riots. And there were boycotts or non-importation agreements signed throughout the colonies. In 1765, the Stamp Act was repealed and replaced with a law called the Townsend Act, which taxed many things, but most importantly for our purposes, tea. We drank 6 million cups of tea a year. Sam Adams began protesting that, and to prevent more riots here in Boston, British troops were sent to occupy the town. For 2 years they occupied our town. They drank, they chased our women who did not run away. But at least 2 British officers suggested that a war in America would more than likely result in more births than deaths. Don't worry, that's as far as I'm taking it. Now, they also stole our jobs, offering to do whatever we did for less money than we did it for. The economy wasn't great at the time, so you can imagine that made them very unpopular. There were lots of fights. 11 days before the Boston Massacre, victim number 6 of the 5 victims, and that's a stone there that memorializes all 6 of the 5 victims of the Boston Massacre. Victim number 6 of the 5 victims of the Boston Massacre was killed. He was a boy named Christopher Snyder, or Cider, depending on what you read. He was among a group of boys harassing a man named Theophilus Lilly. No, that's not why they were harassing him. They were harassing him because he was going to import British goods and sell them. We hung a sign on his door that told everybody in no uncertain terms what we thought he was. It said, importer, and we had to keep it simple. Now, he tried to take the sign down, and we hit him with rocks and sticks and bricks. His neighbor was a ratfink, a snitch, a narc, a tattletale, a grass. He would report you if you smuggled goods without paying the taxes. We didn't like him either. So when he came to take the sign down as well, we hit him with rocks and bricks and sticks. One of them hit his wife. He went into his house and he loaded his musket with swan shot. I have to be careful because if I'm tired, I've accidentally in the past said he grabbed his musket and he loaded it with swan and that's about as far as I get before I realize there's a problem. He fired out the window and he put 11 pieces of swan shot through Christopher Snyder's chest. Snyder died. 3 days before the Boston Massacre, a soldier went looking for work down at Gray's Rope Wall. Someone leaned out the window and said, "Hey, Redcoat, hey, Lobsterback, I've got work for you. You can clean my..." If I say outhouse, will you all know what I meant? Yes. You know what an outhouse is? Okay, good. And you understand that cleaning it is not pleasant? Right, okay, good. Now, a fight broke out. At the center of that fight were Samuel Gray, a Bostonian, and a British private named Kilroy. Private Kilroy beat Samuel... Let me try that again. Samuel Gray beat Matthew Kilroy senseless. Private Kilroy lost, and he was looking for a rematch for 3 days. March 5th, 1770, at the Boston Massacre, Matthew Kilroy sighted down the end of his musket, saw Samuel Gray's smiling face at the muzzle, and put a .69 caliber bullet through it, and then proceeded to bayonet what was left of his head, which after a .69 caliber bullet went through it wasn't much. Feel free to get in there. Also killed at the Boston Massacre, Samuel Maverick, a 17-year-old. This town is horrifying. A 17-year-old apprentice, a bullet bounced off a wall, hit him in the chest, and he was carried home to die in his mother's arms. James Caldwell, a 17-year-old sailor, probably not his mother's arms. Crispus Attucks, the first African-American killed in the American Revolution, and note the order of people here. Patrick Carr, an Irishman who was shot in the guts and took 9 days to die. The same day as the massacre, all of the Townsend duties were repealed, except for a tiny little tax on tea. All right, around the corner, over the river, through the woods.